So maybe we could start with a little Oli for our space today, a little breathing, a little Hanumai, Hanuaku action. Can we Hanumai, breathe in, Hanuaku, breathe out, Hanumai, Hanuaku, Hanumai, Hanuaku. Ahehe ake ia nola ina ohana. Pua mai ole o ka aina malie. Ahena ni vale no i ka makaloha. Eia kahile oe. E pane mai ho'i la. Aloha e, aloha e. Aloha e, yeah. Aloha. Okay. Aloha, my kako. Everyone is doing well today. Mahalo for joining us. I'm excited for this session, excited to be in an awesome partnership space with Hoaka Mana as well. So aloha to our Molokai Ohana. My name is Lilinoy Kohikawa. I'm with Ola Lōkahi, which is the Native Hawaiian Health Board, and I serve as a program coordinator for substance use and mental health programs, and also the project manager for the Ohana Center of Excellence for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Behavioral Health. And so this session today is a partnership between Ohana Center of Excellence, Ola Lōkahi, and Hoaka Mana, and then featuring our amazing grants, all things grants oracle, Jian Lee and Kapua Cheng assisting her today. And so the Ohana Center of Excellence is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Agency, and then coordinated by the Hawaii State Department of Health in partnership with the California State University East Bay, Ola Lōkahi, and San Jose State University. And the Center of Excellence is a resource for empowerment, education, and support for those who are seeking behavioral health care, including mental health and substance use resources. So whether you're a community member or someone in the field of behavioral health that serves any of our communities, we have lots of resources and free resources and trainings and things for you. So please check it out. Our resources man, I can tell it's Thursday. Yeah. Our resources are really rooted in culture, language, and Indigenous knowledge. And we understand that Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders communities are not monolithic, and are incredibly vast and diverse. And those unique aspects of each of our culture are really what keeps us strong. And so we really aim to create resources and learning opportunities that reflect that diversity. So we offer culturally tailored training. We offer free technical assistance where we serve folks who have unique needs. You can ask us for kokua with anything, and we will try to fill whatever type of a request comes in. We have resource libraries that can be browsed by location, topic, culture, language, a lot of downloadable tools for various different types of behavioral health resources and overall wellness and cultural healing and cultural connection. We have nationwide steering committees and lots of other opportunities to get involved across the country to serve our Pacifica populations, no matter where they are. So if you're interested in any of that, please join our listserv, and I'll share. Oh, you know what? I'm not even sharing my screen, am I? Wow. Get it together, Lilinoy. Okay, here we go. Here is this awesome human right here. Here's our Ohana Center of Excellence slide about all the different things that we offer. Here's our handle and our website for you to check out whenever you would like. And then to get back to our regularly scheduled programming, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information on our platform today. So we're using meeting platform instead of webinar. So you will be able to unmute for those of us that have their own Zoom screens and welcome on. I know you folks are all in the same room, but please be sure to raise your hand. Let us know if you have a question, so our presenters can address anything you folks might want to ask. After the workshop's finished today, we do have a follow-up survey that we're going to be sharing. We'll drop it in the chat. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. It is a kind of a longer survey, but you will get entered into a raffle to win a $25 gift card. These surveys really help us perfect what we're the learning opportunities that we're sharing. So if you can indicate what you're looking to see more of, then we can provide it. So it's really helpful for us. We do also offer continuing education credit for this for anyone who might need it. We'll be dropping a link in the chat for that as well. If you want those, just know that there'll be two links that get dropped in the chat, one for the survey and then one for the continuing education. And that basically you'll get a letter that you can use for your any certifications. And that's usually for like social workers or addiction certifications, which a lot of our folks might need. So if you want more information on that, please let me know. I'll drop some information on the chat for you to check out, and then there'll be the follow-up email. So I'd like to turn things over to our presenters now. Jian Lee is of Korean descent and has been a guest in the lands of Kanaka Maoli in the Kingdom of Hawaii since 2009. She has her master's in social work in international and community development and launched her career in nonprofit service over 20 years ago in the Midwest. After contributing to the Oahu nonprofit sector for almost a decade, G moved to Maui in 2018 because it was important to her to raise her son where he is ancestrally from, and for both to connect and contribute to that community. This was an experience she never had, being raised in Michigan due to the Korean War's impact on Korea's economy at the time of her parents' immigration. And they currently live closer to his Hawaiian Ohana, who is from the Napali area in West Maui. She enjoys spending time with her son, Kaimakana, and husband, Jeffrey, immersed in nature, exploring Mauka to Makai. G currently serves as the Director of Impact at Maui United Way and volunteers with many nonprofits in her spare time. She's also a managing partner and consultant at ChangeWorks, focused on creating impactful change with our communities. So, Velina Mai, mahalo G for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Mahalo everybody. 안녕하세요. 제 이름은 이지연이고 너무 반가워요. 같이 시간 보낼 수 있어서. Hi everybody. Aloha. My name is Jian, and I am very happy to be spending time with you all here. I'm starting to, as I present, one of the great, beautiful things that I've had the opportunity to do, thanks to Kanoe and Lilinoe, was start to introduce myself in my mother tongue as well. So I'm so grateful to be able to have that space to do that. I'm here with my colleague, Kapua Chang, who's also just my overall life partner in crime with all the things that we do. And we do a bunch of different things around grant writing and supporting our Indigenous communities to the best of our capacity, and are super excited to be able to share out the different aspects of this to get everybody a little bit more comfortable in this kind of part two. So hopefully you all were able to participate or watch the part one aspect of things, because we really wanted to take some time to take a deeper dive into things. So Kapua and I have been working together for many years, doing grant writing on the side. Just so you all know, it's also a really great skill to be able to learn, and allows for, I think, the opportunity for you to make a living, with a lot of flexibility. So if you all are interested in anything like that, don't hesitate to reach out as well. I think it's something that is very much needed, especially within our Indigenous communities. I wanted to just take a quick minute and share a little bit first off about kind of the process of what we're going to be doing. So we'll initially discuss kind of strategy, mission, vision alignment, and talking a little bit about what that looks like, review programmatic budgets and what that looks like, where to look for grants, and then kind of goals, objectives, and outcomes and the differences between those things. And then have a discussion around the different grants technical support that is available to our community, not just through Kapua and I, but there's some really great structures that are in place. So we'll spend the first kind of, half hour or so going through some of those things, just to get ma'a with all of the processes, so that we're all on the same page. And then our goal is to have about a 30-minute breakout session. I think because of how the different ideas that you all have shared out, it will likely be, there's different types of grants, but it will likely be one for federal programmatic operations, and then one for either a state or a county programmatic operations grant. And we'll actually get super granular and talk through a grant and kind of come up with an idea and talk it out together and get a better sense of that. So you'll have the opportunity to break out between, do you want to, I'll be doing the federal grant side of things, and then Kapua will be doing either a state or a county grant side of things. And you'll get a little bit of a better sense of the differences between those things and how to adjust and pivot your writing and your thoughts around how to convey your message of what you're trying to do with the grants through that process. And then we'll do a little bit of a debrief and then be paused. So any questions before we start? All right. So just as a little bit of a review, but also to delve a little bit deeper, we've had discussions quite a bit. Each of you, are here because, you feel that the grant writing can help to support either your small business or your nonprofit or your school, and wherever that space is. One of the most important things to think about is to talk about strategy, what you are trying to do. So oftentimes it can be really simple, but not everybody really has a clear idea of what that strategy is going to be and how to articulate that. So really ensuring that you know what you're trying to do. A lot of times Kapua and I will do a mini strategic plan before we even go into writing a grant, because oftentimes, you'll be able to get a better sense of what you want to write a grant about, and ensure that the grant and grants that you write are really specific to the area that you really want to make the most impact in within your business or your nonprofit, or whatever entity that you're a part of. So I think one of the first things to think about is, what is the mission of the work that you're trying to do, and what is your why, right? Trying to figure out what purpose you have, what vision you have, and what alignments you're trying to make within your community, within the work that you're doing. And again, I'll reiterate this again, and I know I spoke to this in the first part, is really remembering that each of you are the experts in what you're trying to do, right? And being able to convey that in a really clear, concise manner is really critical before you even put pen to paper at all or get on the computer with that stuff. Really brainstorming and ensuring you've got a lot of clarity. So, for example, I used to be at the Nature Center. I was the executive director over there. And kind of the large vision of it was connecting children and families to nature. It's a very broad concept, AANHPI-based education. Kapua and I actually worked there together. That's where we met. But the strategy that we had during, the 3 to 5 years that I was there was really focused around a multi-touch approach to ensure that our keiki had accessibility to AANHPI-based education, and ensuring that those who didn't have access, right, who might not be able to go out and spend time in nature because both of their parents work, the kids are working, would have the opportunity to engage in these opportunities, not just once in a field trip once a year, but multiple times. So that strategy was really, really granular and specific, right? What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? Who are you serving? What impact will it have within your business or your community? And what types of ideas would align with that, right? So that's kind of it's almost like the business plan side, right? Making sure that you really have a clear sense of your direction and your engagement. And then once you have that kind of set up, really how I like to approach grants is ensuring that once that is there, that's where you're paddling to, right? And so you're in seat 6, and all of the different grant efforts that you're going to do is going to help you get towards that spot. So that way, that's kind of your North Star in how you are going to strategize on what grants you're going to apply for, and really create a development plan on achieving your goal of whatever program or capital ask that you're trying to get to, and actually stand up right from the framework side of things, or physically stand up within the capital side of things. So once you have that strategy and mission alignment set up, really how much, I think it's really important to have a good sense of how much you're asking for, and really getting granular about what your budget looks like, what you're trying to do, how much things are going to cost, really getting an idea of what your fringe is going to be, what your staffing is going to be, what tools you need to make that program successful. And so once you have all of those things in place, you really have to do your own research in ensuring that you know your funder, right? So you and your funder have to really be have pilina there, right? And really ensure that you understand what their mission is, because their mission needs to align with your mission, and you need to be able to tie those things in together as you write about things. And as you try and explain and describe what you're trying to do and the impact that it's going to have on the community. You have to remember that most grantors, whether that be federal, state, city and county, or even private foundations and even individual grantors and funders, they have a goal too, right? And you have to be able to, and their goal is to utilize their funds to make an impact within the community. And what they need to hear from you and want to hear from you is, how is the work that you're going to be doing? How is the operations? How is the program that you're going to create? How's the business that you're going to create going to align with their goals, right? So you really have to almost adapt your grant proposal to really make sure that it's addressing what it is for each specific thing. So for instance, we have Castle Foundation. Castle Foundation is focused on preschools, right? And really ensuring that there's early childhood education and development in place. So if you are setting up a middle school education program, Castle Foundation is not the right person to ask for a grant for. So it's going to not be a good use of your time, right? So really looking to find the right grantees to fit into what it is you're trying to do with your business or your organization is going to be really, really critical. And so a lot of that will be the research of really understanding what funders are out there and what they're looking to do, and whether you can find alignment with what it is. So that's kind of part one of this around strategy, mission, and vision alignment. Kapo, do you have anything else to add in that space?
No, I think we'll circle back to these bigger points when in our breakouts, when we actually go through grants. We're going to pull up some actual grants and try to walk through that, so we can readdress any of these topics or questions that come up in those smaller breakup groups. So we're good.
Great. Okay, that sounds good. So once you have that idea set up, and then you've identified, multiple grants, because honestly, grant writing is very much like fishing. The more fishing poles you are out there, the more fish you're going to catch, right? And so you really have to have a strategy around not just writing one grant and expecting to get that one, but it's a relationship, right? Just like, you build relationships with friends. It is something that's built over time. So in the beginning, a grantor might say, "Oh, you want $10,000? That's too much. I'm not going to give you $10,000. I'm going to give you $1,000 and see what you do with it." But that's where that initial relationship is. That's the testing of the waters. It's, do we fit together? Are you responsive to the grant reporting that's necessary for us to, for the grant to be able to be effective? Are you able to be responsive and share out your metrics? And do you have the data points that you say you have to be able to report on? So really making sure that you know that process is going to be critical. And then kind of the next step is understanding your budget, right? And that's kind of one of the biggest components. And Kapua, if you don't mind dropping into the chat the budget link, but I'll also be sharing out as well. So like we talked about, there's two kind of major grant styles or grant purposes. One is operations, and that's like your programmatic funds, right? And then the other is capital. And so capital is, I want to build a building. I want to be able to build out my store. I want to help to, create a learning space or a learning center. Any of those things would be considered capital grant asks. So most grants are, divided into those two categories. But from just an overall perspective, when we look at a budget, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up a budget here for us to review.
Yeah, G, the budget link is just an Excel sheet. Can you share that?
I am going to.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
So, and all of these links will be provided for you afterwards via email. But this would be a very common looking budget sheet that you will likely see. This is from a state grant and aid. State grant and aids are provided to governmental entities like schools, like the UH, and also nonprofits can apply for them. And grant and aids are both capital or operations. You can actually submit one of each every single year. A lot of it is actually around lobbying and the pilina that you've created with state legislators. But ultimately, it's a very, very similar budget request form to a lot of federal grants, a lot of state grants, and a lot of county and city and county grants. It can be really probably the most intimidating part. I'm a social worker, so I'm definitely not a numbers girl normally. But it's really once you kind of get a better sense of this, it helps for you to figure it out, and it becomes a lot easier over time, because again, this is a very, very common form that you will see. And if you can get familiar with this form, it will basically provide you with almost all of the information you will need moving forward to write any grant budget that you need to. So oftentimes there will be like a grant period, right? So this one is a year, fiscal year. They'll have the applicant information request. So it would be, Ho'akamana or Ola Lōkahi, Ohana Center for Excellence. And then oftentimes the budget category will be split up into different funding categories, especially within governmental sectors. It's usually split up between state, federal, county, and then other private funds, right? And so they oftentimes will want to know how we plan on splitting out the requests that we're asking for. And usually there's like personnel costs and fringe, and then additional expenses. And then usually there's another budget sheet specific for capital requests, vehicle requests, anything that would be a depreciating asset. So anything that you would need to keep track of over time that, is a larger chunk of money, where like a vehicle, for instance, it would be if the state funds it, the state needs to know and show that it's depreciating in value, and you've got to keep track of those things for certain amounts of time that's outlined. I honestly personally recommend not getting any type of depreciating asset from the state, because it's usually a pain to track. It's a lot of extra work. So on the personnel cost side, they will request salaries, and then, payroll and fringe. And usually payroll and fringe will make up about 20% of whatever the salary is. So if the salary is $50,000, for instance, it'll be $50,000 in the salary column and about 20% within payroll and fringe. These types of forms, if you have an accountant or a finance department, 99.9% of the time they can help you with this stuff. You can tell them what you're looking to do, and they can help make this pretty for you. So I really definitely lean into to those people. But nobody knows you and what you're trying to do better than you, and so you can guide that process through this and help to get it split out. Also, oftentimes, they'll ask if they have any matching funds, right? So if this is a state grant and aid, column A is what you're asking for from the state, from your operations side. They're looking for how much federal money are you getting or adding to that bucket to implement your program? How much county money are you asking for? How much private foundation money do you have as well? So they're looking to oftentimes not be like the only person helping to support this happening. They like that diversification of revenue streams and are looking to have multiple different people buying into the work that you're trying to do. So oftentimes it's helpful. And that's why even those $5,000 grants, is helpful because you can add that in and show that there's community buy-in from other grantors as well towards the work that you're trying to do. Any questions so far on personnel costs or fringe budgets generally?
Gee, can I
Please.
say something really quick? Yeah. So I know one thing when we look at budgets and we talk about how much we are asking from our funders, and maybe your program costs $50,000 to run, but this funder is only willing to budge with maybe $3,000 or $5,000. Those are really important, especially for funders who are eventually or who may eventually pull you in to a longer term cycle, because the longer term cycle grants are great because then you have something that's a little bit more committed. This is similar for funders like Castle, who will do a 3-year commitment with a final report review, but sometimes it takes a little bit of, getting your foot in the door. So don't be too nervous, if a funder comes back with a smaller budget than what you are originally proposing, especially if this is the first time you're working with that funder. Because for a lot of these guys, eventually, you can go into an increased budget, but also ones that are committed for longer periods of time.
Thank you. Yes. And it definitely helps to get those multi-year, grants in place and build those relationships over time, because it's trust-based philanthropy, right? People are trusting the grantors to be able to be good stewards of those funds. And if they can trust you all with implementing and executing those funds properly, they want to work with you because you make their lives easier, right? And so ensuring that relationship stays good, that there's communications happening, that you're active and engaged in that process is really critical. So with that, there's also like kind of that section is personnel, and the other section is kind of other current expenses. And you can always add to this. So this is just kind of like the general, right? Sometimes, a lot of times, obviously, there's airfare, there's insurance costs, lease costs, staff training, supplies, telecommunications, utilities. But there can be things like contract work, for instance, right? If you're subbing out work to be able to get support, if I want to contract Kapua to be able to support additional things that need to be done within that grant, all of that space would go in here. This is also, I highlight this because especially if you're not a nonprofit, you can actually work with the nonprofit to be able to get what you're trying to get done, right? With a fiscal sponsorship or contract work. I'll go into that a little bit more afterwards, after we, finish this discussion. But so there's different expenses, and then there's equipment purchases, motor vehicle purchases, and then capital purchases. And these C, D, and E sections also have a separate budget spreadsheet that you've got to go into detail a little bit more to explain further. And oftentimes personnel too. You have to go in and be like, I'm going to hire this. It doesn't have to be this person, but this position for this amount of money. And this is the fringe, right? You've got to really, and we're going to, it's going to be 50% of their FTE, whatever it is, right? You've got to really get a little bit more granular with those spaces. But this is the kind of larger budget section to be able to look at. And normally the budget preparation will either be done by you all if you're doing it individually, or you can have your CFO or finance or accountant person sign off on this, saying that they have reviewed it and that it aligns with what you're looking for, what it aligns with the actuals of things. It's also really important to note that oftentimes the admin and fringe has caps, right? And so you cannot actually say I'm making this up, right? We need a 50% admin fee attached to a $50,000 grant. And so we need $25,000 set aside, right? oftentimes federal, state, and other organizations have a cap. And so that's a good question to ask. Or when you're looking at the different grant applications and the handbooks that they provide you with, they'll usually spell it out in there for you. So make sure to keep an eye out for that component. I think it's really important. And then going back and circling back to like the nonprofit, for-profit, and fiscal sponsorship delineations of things. When you are a nonprofit, you can apply as a 501c3, and there's lots of organizations such as Hawaii Community Foundation and CNHA and other organizations that will, Atherton, McInerney, a lot of them are, one of the qualifications of applying for the grant is actually being a 501c3. If for some reason you are not a 501c3 and you are a for-profit, what you could do is partner with a nonprofit, right? So for instance, if you're at if you are working with a nonprofit organization and they want to work with you as a contract employee, right? Like, oh, I want to contract you out to be able to support the work that we're trying to do together to create a program. Then you could be placed in as a line item, and the submission would be done by the nonprofit specifically. So that would be working as a for-profit, contracting with a nonprofit to do the work. For instance, after the Maui wildfires, a lot of our behavioral health support teams there were contracted by nonprofits to do work and help to support the community with mental health issues. But they are for-profit organizations. They are a line item in a nonprofit organization that sponsored them to do the SURGE grant that Illinois helps to support, other grants that are available to support mental health supportive services, because most of our nonprofits the nonprofits on Maui don't have the capacity to be able to do it internally with just the nonprofit sector. So that's kind of the relationship, like MOU, memorandum of understanding, or contract work relationship. Another way to do it is what's called a fiscal sponsorship. And that fiscal sponsorship is that you are working with a nonprofit, and that nonprofit isn't really doing any of the work, but they're providing you the administrative support and basically hanaing you under their 501c3 and providing you with, usually they charge an admin fee of somewhere between 10 and 20%, usually 15 is probably on average, to run all of the costs through their organization and support you that way. So not every grant allows for that type of framework of fiscal sponsorship, but many of them do. So Hawaii Community Foundation does. I work for Maui United Way. Maui United Way does. Maui United Way actually acts as a fiscal sponsor and will provide that opportunity for them. That oftentimes will need to align with whatever the nonprofit's goal and mission is, right? So Maui United Way is to create more equity and to support the process of uplifting the community and the lahui. So if you're doing something completely outside of that scope, and I don't know, building roads, then that might not be aligned. But if you're trying to support with mental health supportive services, that would be an alignment that aligns with the mission of that nonprofit, and they might be interested in fiscally sponsoring you. There's also organizations, I will mention two of them that are off the top of my head. One is called PICO, and the other one is called Grants Central Station. And their whole organizational structure is literally to provide that fiscal sponsorship to individuals and entities that do not have nonprofit status. So it's a unique approach to looking at things. If you are a business and you're interested in possibly exploring nonprofit status at some point, or if there's work that you feel like aligns really well with the needs of the community, that would open up doors for additional funding opportunities. So those are two organizations. They have websites and they provide that administrative support and help write the grants, help do the grant reporting, and it runs through them. I know Another example would be, Kapua and I worked with Kini A Minor, and Haku Collective did the same thing, where they got fiscally sponsored by Mana Maoli because their missions aligned very well. And the work that Haku Collective was trying to do was to support community and education of music and culture through the work. And that is very much aligned with Mana Maoli's mission. Any questions about that? Everything that we've covered so far around budgets, for-profit, nonprofit, fringe, operations versus capital? Okay. Anything I'm missing, Kapua, in that space?
Nope, I think you're good.
So next section is around where to look for grants. And I know we have shared some of that stuff out, and we'll reshare many of those options as well. But to begin with, I wanted to just share out with you all, and Kapua, if you don't mind linking just for people, but I will also share my screen. I apologize in advance. I'm a multi-tab girl. But there are lots of different organizations that have, just like Lilinoy was talking about, opportunities for different grants. And so one of them, for instance, is Hawaii Community Foundations. They have actually a full calendar of deadlines of different grants and scholarships and programs that they have specific for different areas. So, there's one specific for Lanai, for instance, Eva Beach, right? And then different private foundations. So this one is really probably Hawaii Community Foundation obviously is the most robust. 99.9% of them are for nonprofits. So you'd have to work within that framework. But this is on their website from a review standpoint. And then within their website is, this section on grants, how to apply. That's the printable grants calendar I just showed you. The different open applications, because there's times, right? Different frequently asked questions. We were talking about those fiscal sponsorships. Oftentimes, the nonprofit will have to get approval from the board to be able to provide that fiscal sponsorship. And so there's some forms to be able to utilize in that aspect as well. So that's a really great resource. Hawaii Alliance for Nonprofit Organizations, or HANO, also has some great resources for different grants. There's a grants PDF and a grants database that you can access freely. And this is where they are really working hard. We internally within our state, we have a finite amount of resources and funding. And one of the things that Hawaii Alliance for Nonprofit Organizations and some of our larger organizations that have connections with our federal our delegation for Hawaii is bringing money in from the outside, right? We need to continue to fill our pots, right, with funds coming in from federal entities and other nonprofit or other foundations that are not necessarily on island, so that we have more and are more plentiful in the work that we're doing. It is complicated because federal grants are incredibly complicated. So in order to do that, they actually have different grant resources, one of which is called the Federal Grant Technical Assistance Services Program. It's GTAS for short, and it allows for people who are new to applying for federal grants to get literally free support with people like me. I was literally one of the people that were supporting to help teach and support organizations and entities in learning how to write federal grants for federal projects and coming together, because all of you are experts within your community, within your spaces. And so I think it allows for the barrier of intimidation around writing federal grants, because honestly, they're still intimidating to me oftentimes. They're so robust and intense. It allows for that barrier to be decreased and for us to have access to resources for people that are really, really ma'a with that process. So I would highly recommend taking a look at this opportunity. It's completely free to be able to do, and the whole many millions of dollars have been brought into our community thanks to this opportunity that's been available. We've worked with Bishop Museum and all sorts of other places too to help support that process. And then there's also foundation grant support services that are available. So this is not federal, but local, and Kamehameha Schools is doing that. So a colleague of ours has helped to do this. They are desperately looking for people to take advantage of these services. So please know that this is a resource. It's completely free to be able to support the process, to continue to grow your skill set through that. So it's a really, really great opportunity overall. And then obviously going into the grants database, being able to look and search for things. I'm going to highlight again the amazing work that Papa Ola Lōkahi and Lilinoe does. There's grant funding opportunities, technical support for different nonprofits, other local foundations, all beautifully listed here. It's really, really wonderful, different training opportunities to be able to access. So this is another really, really great site to go to. And again, it's all about, the fishing lines, right? Making sure that we have the more fishing lines, the better. You also have to understand and know that, when you are looking at federal and national grants, your percentage of getting accepted is going to get lower because the pool is bigger, right? So just know that and keep that in mind. And that's why it's so important to diversify the asks that you're doing. Do small asks, right? Try to get individual private people, do individual private foundations, and then, do county asks and state asks, right? Really making sure that you have a robust scope of who you're asking for different things. Gotta look over here. Give me a second. And then the other area, and it sounds really funny, but it's very true, is social media. Instagram does a really great job if you follow the right organization. So go to all of these organizations, follow them on your Instagram, on your social media. They will post when things come up. Oftentimes I'm screenshotting and sending things to Kapua. We within the grants network, we share with each other. We make sure it's a really collaborative space, honestly, that everybody knows about what's going on, right? And that way, as things arise, we're able to share that out. But following these different organizations that are referenced within these spaces, within social media, is a really great place to start. I would highly recommend becoming friends with somebody who's possibly in development, right? Or doing grant writing, because if you get on their lists, they'll be able to share that stuff out as well, and support. So, the United Ways, Hawaii Community Foundation is another great one. They'll continue to share those things out regularly, so that you know when things are coming up, and getting on a lot of those email listservs and social media presences is really helpful. And then visiting from I also wanted to mention specifically OHA, right? Specific to Indigenous grant writing and grants. Kamehameha Schools is another great one. And then Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, CNHA. So all of those are also great spaces to be able to look at. They have probably, so these groups of areas that we're talking about probably have the most flexibility because they're foundations, right? And so you can even go to them with an idea, which we've done before, and be like, this is what we want to do, and almost pitch it to them like you would Shark Tank style, right? And be able to provide a one-pager that clearly states, this is what we're trying to do. This is the ask that we have. This is what I'm trying to build. These are the outcomes that I'm working to have. And, this is the time frame that I need. This is the experience that I have, right? Being able to share that in a one pager and share it out, talk story, have those conversations. When you get denied, which happens to us all the time, going back and saying, not just being like, oh, shucks, I didn't get it. Go back, shoot an email out, say, how come, please share with me, your mana'o on what I could do to write something better next time. Sometimes people will come back saying, oh, just wasn't a good fit because of X, Y, and Z. Others will say, oh, it was really, really competitive this year. And, I encourage you to apply next year, or they'll share with you, what you could do to cater and tailor what you're asking for with what they're looking for, right? Because it's really that alignment that you're looking for. So then outside of the federal space, or outside of the private foundation space rather, is the county and city and county, the state, and the federal government. And those are the areas where things get a little bit more strict and stringent in the process of things. And it's really important to really know your audience and what we're looking for in all of these spaces, but particularly in those. They basically are looking for reasons to say no thank you to you. So you really have to be very granular and specific about answering every little thing, crossing every T, dotting every I. And that's why those options like the Grants Technical Assistance Program is so helpful in those spaces to be able to do. A great resource for that is, do I not have it up here? Might not. Grants.gov. So this is a space to be able to look for federal grants. I've written grants with Kapua for not only, so there's, nonprofits, but also for-profit entities and businesses within EDA, right? Other spaces like that where there's funding. And there's actually some really great funding opportunities that are really specific to Indigenous populations. Oftentimes the Native Americans and Kanaka are, put into a category, and they're looking to specifically address those areas. For our Ohana and Molokai, specific for rural populations, right? So there's grants that really help to kind of narrow in a lot of those spaces, so that you're not competing against, these larger entities, but you can really find grants that are specific for the type of work you're trying to do and try to apply for. Also, I'd recommend buoying up, there's really lots of great opportunities for collaboration, and grantees love that, right? Where you're not just working within your silo, you're showing that you've got this collaboration that's happening on your island or within your space or within your business space. To show that collaboration is happening, because the return on investment is significantly higher when you're collaborating with others. So, the 2 + 2 can equal 5 through that process. And then we talked a little bit about the state grant and aid process. So this is also available, and Kapua can drop this in the chat, and we'll obviously make it available also. Normally, it's like the worst time of year because it's like beginning of January in the middle of the holiday time when they come out. But the grant and aids come out every year almost. I think for COVID, they did do a 1-year pause. And this is kind of flexible funds that can be supportive for the community's needs. And if you think about things, right, from the federal, state, and city and county or county perspective, they're looking for grant applications that are going to serve the community good, right? So you don't just want to talk about, hey, this is going to help me in my business, or, things like that. You want to really talk about how this is going to serve the larger Lahui or your community as a whole. And all the different populations and all the different ways that the work you're going to do is going to serve the community. And, workforce development initiatives, if you're looking to hire people within operations, right? That's a huge keyword right now. How can we, get more jobs out there and get more living wage jobs, right? To ensure that people can stay on island, stay in our community. All of those things, addressing those things are definitely top of mind for our legislators, and I think really important to do. Connecting with people and asking, hey, what do I do to help this? Because I'll be honest, the first grant and aid I wrote, I spent like a month writing this thing, like locking myself up in a hole. And then you find out that really it's about, the relationships, right? And so I had a colleague that I met, and I asked for a little bit of help. He happened to be, used to be the chief of staff for Governor Abercrombie, and he helped to connect me and set up meetings with our with the state reps and senators to be able to plead my case, provide a 1-pager, share what we were trying to do. In particular, this one was after the EL Valley floods. And so there was a lot of people that were very interested in supporting. And And talking to those people in advance before you spend the time to do all of this stuff is really helpful, so that they can guide you in the right direction. Because it might be, you know what, it's not really the legislative year for that. We're not going to have a lot of money. And like maybe this year, for instance, you think about probably a lot of the funds are going to be directed towards Maui wildfire relief. That was the biggest thing that happened in the state. But, you know, how can things connect to that, right? What are the things that the impacts of that you felt that have resonated, that could be worked into the proposal itself, and who are the people that you know, right? We are a small and tight community here, and so leaning into the people that you know that might know, you know, the senators and the reps and people within the offices, and you know, really leaning into those people and, you know, figuring out how to get in front of them to share what's going on. And asking them, you know, instead of going in and saying, this is what I want to do and this is why, asking them, what are your goals? Getting a better sense of what they're trying to do. Same way as we do with the foundations, right? We got to know our audience and how what you're trying to do aligns with what they're hearing from their community and you know, who they're representing. So we talked about that. And then there's also, right, like county efforts. So, for instance, because I'm on Maui now, well, I'm not actually on Maui now, but I live on Maui. I've pulled up the County of Maui Office of Economic Development. This is a brilliant place on every island for you all to go. The work that we were doing with Haku Collective, we were able to get grants from OED. There's an OED on every county. And look at this, there's a grants training video, right? So they go through all the different components. There's a handbook in here. And the whole concept of our Office of Economic Development is to support the economic development of our counties. So a lot of the work that you all do will fall within this category. And they'll support grants for one-time events. So for instance, I helped recently, you know, before the fires and whatnot, with a drive-through Halloween opportunity for keiki during COVID. The melee craft, right? Like the helping bring musicians out to support and sponsor local up-and-coming artists, right? All sorts of things that support the economic development of the community, especially because, you know, we know that, you know, if we can show, hey, we're reinvesting this money back into the community. We hired all local media people, all local comms and graphics people, right? All of the stuff that's going to take that money and leverage it to infuse it into the community to do more with it from a workforce development perspective, but also from a business perspective for you and the work that you're doing, and how that really works to benefit and make it so that the Office of Economic Development looks great because of the work that you're doing, because it can align. And obviously, I know Kanoilani, you get funds from this for Hoakamana as well. So great spaces to be able to do those things. Since we have our Molokai Ohana over here too, Maui Economic Development Board, or the Oahu Economic Development Board, another great place to build pilina and get a sense of things. Any questions so far on the where to look for grants?
G, can I expand on some things? Hi, everyone. So I know we're going really fast, but this is recorded and you'll be able to watch it back. But to reiterate and expand on some of the things that G mentioned in this section, she mentioned collaborations. Collaborations are really, really important. It's something that funders look for a lot these days compared to even like 5 years ago. Some grants even require collaboration. So if you're a small business or a small nonprofit that hasn't really looked outside of your organization for programmatic things, it might be a good idea to start kind of feeling that out. Building relationship with your funder is also really important, not only with the hope of getting more funding or getting longer term funding, but also for flexibility within your budget items. So for example, let's say you put $1,500 in supplies, and let's say someone donated those supplies to you folks. Well, great, but will your funder allow you to move that $1,500 to maybe travel? Maybe you're thinking of sending some of your team to do like a mini pilot program on a different island, right? So some funders are really lenient about that, but sometimes it takes a little bit of that relationship building for funders to be like, oh, okay, we trust you with these funds. Go ahead, submit a budget revision, or maybe they won't even make you do a budget revision. So again, building pilina with your funders is important. G also touched on, getting those denial award letters. And I just wanted to say, don't be discouraged from those. I mean, when you apply for 20, you might get, I don't know, 5, and that's okay. Some funders are really good about follow-up meetings. And I know a lot of organizations don't take advantage of that because no one wants to hear why you didn't get the money all the time. But it can be really helpful for the next time that cycle comes out, so you have a more solid application. I know HCF does this. If you get denied HCF, they'll connect you with one of their program specialists or grant management specialists, and you can have a meeting with them, and they can actually go over what the committee said when they were taking notes on your rubric when those grants were being reviewed. So HCF does that. McInerney and Atherton will do that. And even sometimes if you're on the federal side of things or the government side of things, if you're applying for congressionally directed spending, sometimes the senator's office reps will do it for you too. And it just helps you to build more resources and knowledge around how to submit a better application next time. Yeah, and then some funders, we dropped a bunch of links, and G share screened a bunch of places where you can look for grants. Some grants or grantors or funders are invite only. So that's another reason why it's important to get your face out there, go to the events, go to the networking. I know it can be a little not always super fun, but when you get your face and your mission in front of these people, then you have more of a chance of being invited to those funders. People like Kamehameha Schools operates like that, right? We know they got a bajillion amount of money, but you have to be invited for their partnerships, for their funding opportunities. And I think Hau'oli Maoloa you have to be invited for Hau'oli Maoloa as well. So just a few things to think about.
And I think another great thing to add to that, thank you, Kapua, is as you're, if you can be proactive about what you're going to write on. So, right, like you've got your idea of what you're trying to do. Let's say, so I've got this up here. Look, there's an email and a phone number for grants at OED. You want to shoot them an email and say, hey, is there a program officer or grants officer I can speak with? I have an idea and I would love to talk through it with you all and see if it might be a great fit. And that's how you can start to really formulate and really adapt what you're trying to do specific for that grantor, because then they feel like they're a part of that process and they know their board. They know who's going to look at this stuff. They know what they're trying to do best, right, in that moment. And so if you're able to do that, it really, really helps to have, you want to just keep having your face out there. So much of, I helped with honestly millions of grants after the wildfires with different nonprofit organizations and grassroots organizations to bring funding in. I literally was in front of a computer for months, I think. And so much of it was just trust-based. The grantors knew that I was going to make sure that the reports were going to get turned in and that the work was going to get done, right? And they knew that because of that relationship that I built over time. right? And so it's a long con play, but once you have that in place, it really makes things a lot easier because then they'll start coming to you and say, hey, what's going on in this space? Because again, people don't know the spaces like you do, right? What can I do to help in this space? And I'm seeing these things, or I saw a news article on this. How do we address these things together? And then you develop a partnership in that space, right? So, but that doesn't happen until you get a name, you get a number, you write a thank you card handwritten, right? All of those little touches that we do, supports that process for sure. Okay, so that's on that side, and then we're gonna just really quickly review because this process is very, very commonly confusing, and so this little one-pager website really helps. A lot of times, funders will ask for, what is your goal? What is your objective? What are your measurable outcomes, right? And people get really confused, and I think it's really helpful to get a sense of what those things are. So the goal is that broad statement of what you're trying to accomplish. It's general, it's intangible, it's abstract. It's the hook that's going to really get people interested. We want to connect children and families to nature. That's our goal, right? The objective represents a step towards accomplishing that goal. It's the how, right? We're going to do that by these programmatic objectives, right? You're describing the expected outcomes of your program and how they're going to be achieved, how it's going to impact the community, how it's going to impact the people that you're working with to make it happen. And it's really setting those priorities and targets for progress and accountability. I know in the first section, this is kind of like my mantra, these SMART goals. So it really has to hit these things to be clear and concise. And I promise you, all of the people that are reviewing your application knows to look for these things. It's specific, the who, what, it's measurable. How much change are you going to be able to do? How many people are you going to be able to serve? How many people are you hiring? All of those things, right? Very, very specific. 4, 10, 60, whatever the number is. Make it look good, but make it achievable too, right? You don't want to overextend. You want to underpromise and overdeliver when it comes to grants, right? So you want to figure out what the number is and make sure that that number makes sense and that you're either going to meet it or exceed it. If you don't, that's okay. Communicate that ahead of time. The grantors are hugely receptive to changes and shifts and pivots. If in the last 5 years we haven't figured out that things change constantly, we have learned nothing, right? So things happen. They're okay with that. They don't want to hear that the day before your report is due. They want to hear that live time. Email it. Don't just call. Have that documentation in place. Save that documentation, right? Is it realistic? If I say for $5, I'm going to serve 5,000 people dinner, that's completely unrealistic unless I'm getting a bunch of it donated, right? So you have to make sure they're going to look for it, whether it seems reasonable or not. And then time bound, right? You want to share what you're going to do during what time frame, because they're really looking to be able to measure one application against another. And when you have those SMART goals in place, it really helps to ensure that stuff is in order. And then in these spaces, integrating in, like Apul was saying, those partnerships will be really, really great too. So again, the goals are kind of broader, more general intentions. The objectives are narrower, more precise, more specific and concrete, and can be validated. Any questions on that?
I had a question.
Yes.
So in one of our grants, we got a federal and an OPA grant. I noticed the grant writer, and this is like a big, hopefully we can talk about in small groups, but she wrote and promised that we would do X amount, we would service X amount of kids, which is a much higher number than what we normally do. I mean, under prevention side, we service a lot, but for our early intervention, like they promised 10. So 4 camps a year, 10 people each camp. And like, we just went through one camp and we had 7. So my question is, like, I know you mentioned not over promising. So I was real skeptical in our last grant meeting. I mentioned that, like, is that going to be a problem in reporting? And again, this is like our very first time getting a grant. So I'm I'm nervous, I'll be honest. Being the, program director, like I kind of oversee that. So what is your experience with that? Like, is that something they normally would adjust the budget to, or how would you, what are your feedback with that?
So sometimes it's like I think about it and it sounds kind of grody, but it's like you're a little bit of a used car salesman, right? You've got to figure out the best way to explain the situation and really strategize on what that looks like. I've definitely been in the same situation with like NOAA, for instance. And it's like, we're going to go shark tagging and do all of these things and serve 20,000 kids and everything else. And then things happen, right? And so it's finding a way to message it where it doesn't look like, well, I mean, there's parts of it where it's like, either I'm new and I'm so sorry, but X, Y, and Z has happened and I've come into this. And when we look at this, we're realizing that these numbers are probably more accurate than those numbers. And I think it's okay to say that. And other things like, for instance, we've had a bunch of pivots, right? At Maui United Way, we had community impact grants that went out. A lot of people pivoted to supporting the Maui fire disaster relief efforts, right? And so we had this big incident that arose. COVID was another example. Our economy changed significantly. Our capacity to support and our normal way of doing business changed. So was there anything within your organization that adjusted that, right? That might help to support the narrative of what it is. It might not be the only reason. It might just be, oh, that grant writer didn't talk to programmatic operations, which definitely happens way too much. And that's part of why I love being in this space, because I do the direct service and I'm like, I can write grants that make sense, that help support all the other things, right? So you can leverage that. But when it doesn't happen, being able to kind of walk that fine line to provide mana'o in the reasoning behind it, right? That supports all those things, can happen. There's always reasons. And I think overall, even on the federal side, I've found a lot of grace. You can ask for extension if that's what it takes, right? It really will depend on whether, like, is it that you're going to have, too much money and not enough, like you won't have enough time to spend the money to be able to meet that deliverable. That's very different than I need all that money and the deliverable is going to be significantly lower, right? It can also be shucks. I mean, I can't leave the grocery store for less than $100 for half a bag of groceries anymore. Cost of things have gone up, right? So all of those things, right, can be explanations, not excuses, but explanations as to why things have changed and pivoted. And I think coming to them with the plan of this is what we're trying to do. Another thing I often reference is like, I feel really strongly in the depth of the connection versus the breadth of the connection. I would rather touch 10 people significantly in smaller groups than 100 people kind of like, surface wise, right? And so, speaking to that and adjusting what you're going to be doing, perhaps it's programmatically, you're going to make it deeper, right? You're going to make that connection or that touch deeper versus wider. And so you're adjusting that component of things. And usually they don't have the final say, but they can advocate for you if you're able to explain things. And you can even say, so these are the things. What do you think, the response would be? What other information do you need? How can we share this out appropriately? Is there anything else that you think might help our case given the situation? And I think that, again, just that open line of communication and dialogue is really, at the core of ensuring that those types of conversations and strategies go well. But really important to have discussions with your leadership team, your board, and, and then ensuring, even saying, shucks, we messed up, right? You can say that. But we have all of these things in place to make sure we're not going to mess up again, right? So this is what happened. These are the things we've done to fix it. And I can guarantee you, I can look you in the eye and tell you that moving forward, it's going to be different. Like that's the type of work of setup that I think you want to give. Kupu, any other additions to that?
Yeah, I'll just expanding on that. As long as the situation allows, is in alignment with this, G talks about messaging. So try to relay it in a way where it's not a ding on the quality of your program, right? It's not because you didn't have the cultural experts that you said you were going to have. No, you had those people. So it was more of a situational thing that affected your program numbers, right? It could have been maybe something else was going on that same week that you were going to have the kids or your participants attend your event or your program. Or maybe it was something to do with weather. Especially a lot of our environmental nonprofits that do like these summer programs or spring break programs, weather can become an issue. Obviously, almost every single nonprofit on Maui, numbers significantly dipped after the wildfires, right? Now, we hope that things like that don't occur, but these are situational things that happen where it has nothing to do with the quality of your program. And you can, say that, explain that and what else was going on situationally. But also talk about the good stuff that did happen with those 7 kids, because it doesn't always have to be numbers driven. If you say that these 7 kids that you got experienced or were able to gain more knowledge or more understanding, and you can put some testimonials into your reporting, that's great. Most of the times, funders, especially when you're looking at private foundation funders, will be okay with that. When you look at more state and federal, you could run into a little bit more issues with numbers because they're the ones that really like the numbers. But most of the time, if it's a situational thing and your explanation is reasonable, they're lenient. Don't make a habit of it, right? If you know that you can't get to 10, increases are always nice, like especially if your funder is funding you for multiple years in a row or you're applying for the same grant multiple years in a row. But if you're struggling with getting 10, keep it at 7 or just do 8. Maybe this year you do 7, next year you do 8. It's be reasonable and know how your program is engaging with your community. You can even, another possibility is writing in funding for the following year for recruitment efforts or marketing efforts. You could always up that part of your budget too. Yeah.
So I just wanted to, I want to pivot into small groups, but I wanted to get a sense from you all. There's a couple different ways that we're thinking about organizing. Can I get a raise of hands of who's interested in learning more about federal grants versus private foundation grants? So can I get federal grants? Hands up. Nobody?
I would say both. I would like both because we have a federal and we have a state. So
private foundation grants? Is that what most people are interested in?
Yeah.
And sorry, I can't see some people, so it's tough.
Yeah, I saw a couple of people
Okay, both.
that one because we're thinking we could break you folks up into talking about government grants versus private foundation grants, or we can break you up into
like we could do grant and aids and then Office of Economic Development, like state and then like a county grant. Can I see your hand.
What would be best to put our for-profit folks in so that we're getting the best information?
I think OED. So I think OED grants. So OED is a good one. And then you know what, Kapua, why don't you do OED, or are you comfortable with OED? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or do you want me to do it? Okay, let's do OED, and then why don't I do GIA and then I'll wrap in some federal stuff into that, right? So I'll do like state, federal, and then for the for-profits, I'll have Kapua do the OED. So let me rename this so it's not confusing.
Like that.
Because, sorry, go ahead, Luna.
Sorry, I just changed the breakout rooms for profit and nonprofit. Is that easier?
Oh, no, I just changed it too. I put state, federal grants and then OED grants.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I don't know if I didn't see it. Okay, I'm going to try opening the rooms. Kapua will be in the OED grants room, and then I will be in the state and federal grants room. And then we will kind of go through and talk through one of them and do a sample. And I think that'll help too with the process of having everybody understand how to do them. And I'll share a little bit more about federal grants because there's all sorts of extra fun things to have to do prior to applying for those too. Okay, mahalo.
Sorry, G.
Yes.
My breakout rooms aren't. Can you put me in the room?
I can.
Oh, I see it. It just updated.
Sorry,
Okay.
I just
Yeah,
clicked
I see it.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll stay in the main room in case anybody gets booted out.
Mahalo.